Hey everyone, Creatively Cara here, and welcome to my creative journey. Today I'm collaborating with ParKoo as they sent me their acrylic paint markers to test them out. So I'm going to give you my honest feedback and review on these and test them out on a few different items. Some of those things include this acrylic painting that I've already made, so I'm going to use the markers to then outline it, and this goes along with my bullet journal theme, which is kind of these muted color pumpkins. I also have a cute little pumpkin that I just purchased, so I thought I would try out the markers on this to see if it would work on this type of a surface. This is a real pumpkin, so we'll see how that goes. And I also found this at the Dollar Tree, and I thought I would put a little message on it and possibly put it in my kitchen or somewhere that I can display this. And of course, I will also test out the markers just on some paper. So I have some mixed media paper as well as some blackout paper. So we'll use these to kind of see how it looks like on regular paper as well, in case you want to use it on there. I'm really excited to give these a try. I've not really used acrylic paint markers before. I've used acrylic paint before, but not the markers. So we shall see how this goes, and I am excited to share it with you. Let's get creating. Here are the acrylic paint pens by ParKoo. Now, just to reiterate, I was sent these for free for my honest review, so we're just trying them out today to see how they work on most surfaces. They are water-based, permanent, and waterproof, as well as sunproof. They're a 1mm fine point, which I don't really consider that fine point, but it says fine point. And so it does kind of have a little bit more of a bold stroke, but I think that that works really well for paint markers. I'm going to be adding timestamps to this video in case you want to jump around to see the different textures and items that I use with these paint pens. I will be adding my bullet journal into this as well. I use the Scribbles That Matter, which is 160 GSM. So if you want to check out how these markers would work in your bullet journal, you can check out the timestamp down below. These come in a variety of colors. They have a clear barrel so that you can kind of see where the ink's life is at, and they all come individually wrapped with plastic, which isn't very environmentally friendly, but it does help you know that they have not been used and they've not been opened and they're still pretty secured in there. So it took a minute to unwrap all of these, and they do have specific instructions on the marker itself. So you are supposed to shake it, and then you end up putting pressure on the pen to activate the ink initially. There are 20 beautiful colors. There's even a silver and gold color, which I think is great, and they do kind of have more of a metallic texture to it. Now let's begin by doing some testing on regular paper, just so we can kind of see how these colors turn out and how they work. And again, just make sure you shake it first to get the ink flowing, and then tap it a few times on the paper until the ink comes down the tip. This is something you really only need to do the first time you use it, but if it's been a while since you've used the markers, it's something you probably will want to go back and do to reactivate that ink. But here's a closer look at how that comes out. It's pretty fun to watch, actually. Pretty relaxing when you do the initial ink flow. They do take a minute to dry. I mean, it is a paint pen, so it's not something you're going to expect to have instant drying ink, but so be careful when you're using it not to smear it. It just needs a couple minutes to dry. But those are the metallic colors as well. Again, I really like this silver. This silver has a really nice metallic look to it. I wanted to try it on black paper as well. Since these are acrylic paint pens, I felt like they would show up really well on black paper, and I was right. I think these all look so beautiful on the black paper that I probably will do some art with them on the black paper in the future. Now we're going to finish up this art piece that I made, and I'm using my bullet journal for inspiration. So I'm using the black acrylic paint pen so that I can basically outline my pumpkins and add a little bit of lettering to this. This is sort of an acrylic canvas, so it's very rough, and it made my lines a little bumpy. I guess that's something to be mindful of, but overall I felt like these pens worked really well on this material. I think it held it pretty well. And it was pretty easy to use to paint over for details. So if you're looking for some paint pens to add details to some of your paintings, I think that these would work really well. I felt like the color went over top of my acrylic paint very well. And I was a little sloppy with it just because that's how I wanted this style to turn out. So that was just sort of a personal preference. Now we're going to add in the lettering, and I'm just going to put Happy Fall up here on the top so that I can then use this as decoration in my home. And I didn't write this out beforehand, so I was just kind of freehanding it. And I did notice again, it was a little wobbly as I was trying to write just because of the texture of the canvas. But I did a little bit of faux calligraphy. So I went back over to add a thicker downstroke for the letters here. And I did notice too that once I was doing this, I felt like the paint pen sort of was bleeding a little bit or adding sort of these frayed edge looks onto the lettering. And you'll see that here in just a second when we go to a close-up. Overall, these worked really well on the acrylic canvas. So again, really great if you want to use it for details in your paintings. Now I have this cute little chalkboard, but it's more of a plastic texture that I'm writing on. So I was a little nervous about this, especially since it probably would smear very easily. So I was super careful when writing this out, but I decided to go with the phrase of, but first, coffee. And I wanted to use this in my kitchen to put next to my coffee maker. So I was trying, again, I didn't really write this out. I was sort of winging it, which is not always a good idea for me because I end up running out of space or just don't calculate it correctly. So yeah, that's not usually a good strategy for myself. I tried to write out in pencil coffee here first so that I could have a good idea of how I needed my letters to fit, but I couldn't really see it with the black and my lighting, so it was just sort of whatever. Ultimately, it ended up being pretty okay, I would say. You can kind of see that as we got towards the last E, the letters got a little bit taller. So what I decided to do was I went back over the letters to thicken them up a little bit, and I think this helped the word coffee pop out a little bit more. And then I was able to sort of make the letters a little bit more even in their size. And ultimately, I loved how it turned out. I would say that this material worked pretty well. Again, if you're going to use something like plastic, just be mindful of the fact that it will take a little bit longer for the paint to dry, especially if you're going thicker like I am with kind of going over it. So definitely give it the time to dry and try not to smear it. I think I actually was successful in not smearing this one. But yes, the plastic surfaces do work. And I really love the white pen. It's probably something that I will continue to use. Now onto the pumpkin. This is just sort of a mini pumpkin that I had. The surface is very shiny, slippery. I don't know. It's kind of maybe like a plastic. And I was trying to go for an ombre look here. I wanted to play around with this pumpkin and color it. Yes, it took forever to use these paint pens. If you're going to color a pumpkin like all the way, you're probably better off just using like actual acrylic paint and a brush. But I wanted to test out these markers, so I took the challenge. So I went through and the colors weren't like blending super well, but ultimately I was not enjoying it. Once I kind of started getting further into it, I finished up the light blue and moved on to the lavender. I started to notice that the light blue paint was like peeling or chipping off. So it was not a really great surface to use. So I just decided to stop because I wasn't enjoying that. But what I did want to do is test out these markers in my bullet journal, since that is one of the items that I use the most. I would say if you have 160 GSM paper, it works pretty well. I was actually a little surprised. I mean, there's maybe a little bit of ghosting when you get certain light on it, but no bleeding through it at all. And that makes me really excited because I'm probably gonna end up using these in my bullet journal now. I wanted to also test it out in the Leuchtturm 1917 because I know that those papers are a lot thinner. I think they're 80 GSM, and I knew that it was going to end up badly ghosting and maybe even bleeding through. So if you have the Leuchtturm or a notebook that has thinner pages, I probably would not recommend these pens. Thank you all so much for taking the time to watch this video today. If you liked what you saw, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. Until next time, bye-bye.